It's been a little while since I last did a video. I've been working away, but slowly, so haven't made an enormous amount of progress. The Scythian project was complete, but I decided to add 2 more units to it. I got 1.5 units done and then ran out of figures, and the supplier took a little while to get the remaining figures to me, so I haven't I found something else to do in between time, which is one of the things that tends to happen sometimes. Anyway, I've started a new project, and this is 100 Years' War English, or more specifically the English in England during the 100 Years' War. I've got an enormous number of medieval troops, but most of them are very old figures and not painted to a very high standard. So I've decided to replace them and rebuild some of my old armies. Anyway, I'll turn the camera around and show you what I've got to so far. Okay. Before I go on to talk about the actual figures I've been painting, I want to talk about some books on the subject that I have found very interesting and very useful. The first is this, I'm going to call it monumental, it's enormous, undertaking by Jonathan Sumption on the whole of the 100 Years' War. This is volume 4 of 5 volumes. And the 5th volume has only just been published, I believe. The one in front of you, number 4, deals with the period of around about 1400 to 1422, that sort of period. So Henry IV, Henry V in England, and the beginnings of the massive civil war in France. This is a great book, it's fantastic. It's not an easy read, but it gives an enormous amount of insight into what was going on. We tend to think of the 100 Years' War in 3 battles, don't we? We tend to think of it as Crécy, Poitiers and Agincourt. Nobody remembers Castillon or Verneuil, and certainly not the battles going on in the Spanish theatre. But this is a fantastic source. But I recommend you only delve into it if you've got a very deep interest in the subject. So that's volume 4. Then got volume 3. Volume 2. And volume 1. There's a lot of reading in there. It's well annotated, it's got lots of notes, it's got plenty of maps and plans, and it describes more clearly than anything else I've come across what the 100 Years' War was about and who the interested parties were. Now, in addition to them, there's another book that I've recently picked up and found very interesting. This is an autobiography of Henry VI. So this is right at the end of the 100 Years' War and the beginning of the Wars of the Roses. This is the subject matter that will be covered by Volume 5 in Jonathan Sumption's work, at least up until 1453. This is an easier read, and it has some elements of dramatization in it, where the author tries to evoke the period. It's also not quite chronological in the sense that it will jump to significant moments and then from there work back to how that moment came about and work forward as to what the implications of that moment were. Specifically things like when the Earl of Warwick changed sides and abandoned Edward IV and joined forces with Margaret of Anjou. That is a set piece that it picks upon and then shows how the Earl of Warwick and indeed the Duke of Clarence came to the decision to change sides and what fell out from that leading up to the battles of Barnet and Tewkesbury, I suppose. So, easier read and excellent background information on the period. And when you couple this with the Osprey titles and the old WRG medieval source book, that's basically my go-to for things about the 100 Years' War. Right, I'm now going to put some figures up, so bear with me a minute. So firstly we have a unit of dismounted men-at-arms. These are from the Agincourt period, so around about 1410 to 1420. Although the period I was interested in specifically is a little later than that, about 1435. There was a battle up in the northern marches with the Scottish called Piperdene, where the Earl of Percy fought against the Scottish Earl of Douglas. So I'll give these a twirl. Now one of the things about the 100 Years' War is that the period is kind of divided by the type of armour worn. Now, these figures have jupon, and some of them are in just, I suppose, white harness, I think you'd call it. These figures are from Blue Moon, and I rather like them. They have, they're quite big for 15mm figures. They're actually probably near 17. And there's quite a bit of tidying up to do on them. There are a lot of little worms from the casting process that need to be identified and cut off. And frustratingly, some of them you only see after you've put a coat of paint on. Once you know the figure, you know where to look, and that's not so difficult, but I did find it quite frustrating in the first instance. So there you are, that's the first unit of man-at-arms I've done. You'll also notice I haven't based these yet. I'm still pondering on the best way of doing that. Right, so there we go. Right, I'm going to turn the camera off and change the figures. Here we have a unit of billmen. These are wearing the quilted, padded jackets, armour that they wore, the gambesons I think they're called. Again, the figures Blue Moon. Again, they're very nicely done. They're chunky, they stand quite nicely together. They're not all doing the same thing with their pole arms. Nice to paint, and I think they came out quite well, so I'm quite pleased with these in the whole. given them a variety of sort of base colours for their padded armour, just to add a bit of visual interest to the unit. One thing about Blue Moon is they supply in bags of 30 infantry and 15 cavalry. Some of the command packs have 9 figures in, something like that, but that can be a bit frustrating, because I would prefer to have 32 infantry to give me 8 bases of 4, and 18 cavalry to give me 6 bases of 3. But there you go. Anyway, so those are the billmen, or the first unit of billmen. Here we have a unit of skirmishing javelinmen. There's something about these that isn't quite up to the standard of the billmen and the knights. I'm not sure what it is, but they paint up all right, and I'm quite pleased with the final result. There are a fair number of different poses here, although some of them are quite similar. So in one way that's a wasted opportunity, but altogether I think they worked all right. So those are the skirmishers. And these are the northern border horse. In fact, the figure here is the French gross varlet. Effectively, it's a man in quilted armour again, carrying a spear. One thing about these Blue Moon mounted figures I didn't realise at the outset was that they're provided in 2 parts. The legs and the saddle are moulded on the horse, and the torso is separate and has to be glued in place. And that caused me a degree of I don't know how to describe it. I had a couple of false starts there, and these are still not perfect. There are gaps that are more visible than I would like. There's definitely a learning curve in how to do it. But when they're mounted up and based, I think they will look fine. I like the horses. I think there's a variety of different poses in the horses, and they stand comparison with the best in the market, I think. So there we go. That is how far I've got. The next unit I'm painting will actually be a block of spearmen, and this is for an earlier period than the one I've been working on to date. At the beginning of the period of the 100 Years' War, sort of 1330, actually just 1325, 26, 27, that sort of period. So just before the 100 Years' War starts. So that will be the next one on the painting table. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little video. Thank you for watching, and I hope I'll be back in not too long a time. Thank you.